Hello, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 5 of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. I'm Bekah, and this is a podcast that features members of the Virtual Coffee community. Virtual Coffee is an intimate group of developers at all stages of their coding journey, and they're here on this podcast sharing their stories and what they've learned. And we're here to share it with you. Here with me today is my co-host, Dan.
What up, Beck? How's it going?
It is fantastic. How's it going with you?
It's going pretty good. Yeah. I've had probably too much coffee this morning, but other than that, feeling pretty good.
Nice.
And so today we have another awesome interview with another awesome member of Virtual Coffee. We're talking to Rebecca Key, who is a software engineer based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Rebecca had a really cool story. She was actually an organic chemist for years. She has her PhD. So I'm sorry, I should have said Dr. Rebecca Key. I meant to do that earlier. And she was an organic chemist, did that for a long time, worked in a lab, all that stuff. And then around the COVID times, I think, transitioned to being a developer, which I think a lot of our career changer people did that during that time, sort of a tumultuous time for everybody. And it was really good talking to Rebecca.
Yeah, it was really cool to talk about that transition and then also bringing her hobbies into things. She talked a lot about her experience with her ham radio, which I thought was really cool. And I really love getting to know like all of the sides of the people who come to the podcast. So I think that we got to explore a lot of different aspects of what it is to be a person in tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we start every episode of the podcast like we start every virtual coffee. We say our names, where we're from, what we do, and a random check-in question. We hope you enjoy this episode. Today's random check-in question is, what's one fun fact that you know? So one fun fact that I know is that possums have 13 nipples and they go in a circle with the 13th one in the middle.
That can't be real.
It is. I looked it up. And this is like a side note. I was at a conference once and they were giving out drink tickets and they were like, tell us a fun fact. And I told them that fun fact and they were like, well, we meant about yourself, but that will work too. Like, cool.
Yeah. You just broke my brain.
That's
mean,
like how can you follow that?
A child would draw. Hey, do you want to do the rest of the intro, or are you just like your intro?
I just got really excited about the question. Screw this all out. My name is Bekah. I am a technical community builder from a small town in Ohio. And there's also an animal that poops in squares, but I can't remember which one it is. Who knows?
That one I knew. It's a wombat, right?
Yes, wombat. I know that fun fact too.
I knew that one. That is that is a talent I've always been jealous of, like that seems like a cool ability.
Do you know why they poop in squares?
I don't know for sure. My guess is something about rolling down hills, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, it's to mark territory, so it wouldn't roll down hills. They needed to have square poop, so they made it happen.
Nature is a miracle. Okay, hi, I'm Dan. Cleveland, Ohio, computery things. Let's see. Fun fact.
How are you going to get on me for my intro and you say computery things?
Okay, well, I said something, Okay. There are, let's see, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, something else. All are related. And Brussels sprouts. And come from the same plant, and they're all human made. So that this one plant, humans took this plant and then selected for, flowers and made cauliflower, and selected for something else. I don't really know all of the genetics, but like all of those plants don't come from nature. They come from human, plant. I don't know what you call it, gene manipulation, but like not in a chemistry lab. I don't know.
Why do they choose all the bitter things and not like chocolate?
Well, I think the plant was bitter. I don't think they could.
Yeah, but why would you say like, I'm going to take this bitter plant and make more bitter plants out of it? Like,
Well,
Why
some
wouldn't
people
you
like
take
bitter plants.
I mean, I also enjoy eating
I
all of
mean,
those things, but
I do
this
too,
isn't
right?
weird. Like,
But they're different. Like like eating, broccoli and cauliflower, that makes those like kind of look similar, except for the color. But like the uh yeah, kale and I don't know if asparagus is in there.
doesn't it come from the
Definitely,
mustard seed?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it comes from some kind of seed because it's a plant. I don't remember what the. I should work on this fun fact so that I can actually say it. For drink tickets, apparently. But yeah, that's the first fun fact that popped in my brain. So I'm going with that.
My name is Rebecca. I am a software engineer based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And a fun fact, one of the first ones that's coming to my mind is from an old school email chain. And I remember it's apparently impossible to lick your elbow.
Like nobody can do it.
Because my kids have tried, yeah.
And then according to the email chain further down, it's like a certain number of people are going to try to lick their elbow after reading this. But I don't know if that myth has been debunked or not, but
Oh,
apparently it's
man.
tough or to impossible to do. Get
Yeah,
back
I
to us.
wonder. All
It
right,
makes me wanna try. When
everybody at home,
anytime
try
someone
right now.
says, "Don't do you can't do that thing," then I am usually gonna try it, but in the
All right, well,
circumstance,
give it a shot.
I'm not gonna try it in front of people. After we're done recording, I will try to lick my elbow.
Oh, fine. Uh, yeah, I wonder if there's like the people that can do the like crazy, you know, I don't know what you call it. Um,
When their
but
joints
they
are
can
all
be super bendy and stuff.
Double jointed.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if there's something like that. Or there was who was it in Lethal Weapon? The guy Briggs. What is I forget what the actor's name is, but he had a trick. He had a trick shoulder where he could pop it out. Like like he used it to get out of bad situations. But I wonder if he could pop it out and then just like turn his arm around. All right, if you have a trick shoulder, I want to hear from you. Let us know.
That's
Double
right.
jointed.
Send us some
Yeah.
messages. Podcast@virtualcoffee.io, right? We have that email address.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Send us all your feedback and fun stories. We're here for them. And speaking of fun stories, we have Rebecca Key here with us today. And we are very thankful. So thank you for being here. We're very excited to hear your story today.
Thank you again for having me. So, as I mentioned before, I'm a software engineer. I come to tech after many years in being in science, specifically organic chemistry. I served in many roles over the years in research labs, being a laboratory technician all the way up to a research director in the pet care industry. And from there, like being an R&D director, that was in the height of the pandemic. So, with the world shut down, everyone kind of, or some people, paused. It's like, okay, where am I at? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? And I had made solid contributions in my role. And what I wanted to do was be able to use my problem solving skill set to be able to make a broader impact. And when I say broader impact, with software engineering, namely front end development, which I spend most of my time doing, you have a pretty quick feedback loop on your work. Like in science, it can be an order of years from an idea from inception to completion to any sort of publication. And within that, your lab experiments can, last from days to weeks. Again, where I hit refresh on a UI and I immediately again know where I'm going. And a wrong answer is at least an answer to get me back on the right track. And I can do that quickly. Um, Hopefully not taking a matter of days, years, etc.
Mhm.
You got to get help long before that comes along. So and that's what brought me to the field. I started working with a fitness-based web app that I started, Race Prep Fit. I'm hoping to get that eventually as a subscription service. The premise of it is having users customize their training program to meet goals for an event of their choice. I've also, beyond that, have done some independent contract work. Most recently with Dan, I'm building UI elements in React, and it was a really neat experience where I'm a React developer more than anything else in tech, but I was able to learn more frameworks in React versus just the Create React app where I started. So it was, neat being able to use Storybook, getting familiar with Remix and even dabbling a little bit in TypeScript, which I'd been wanting to do. And that gave me a reason to work on that. Done some other freelance work where I'm building static websites with companies, building a landing page, getting a form ready for people to subscribe to the company's email list. I've actually most recently started diving into content creation, reviving my blog for Ham Radio Adventures, RF Quest. Alongside that, I'm editing a video of where I built a 40-meter antenna in my backyard, hoping to get that on YouTube here in the next few days. So, um, definitely keeping myself busy with things like that. And also with working with the ham radio, I'm able to keep my speaking and writing skills up to snuff because unfortunately that is a very perishable skill set. And it's so important no matter what field you go into to be able to communicate, whether it's, you know, speaking or writing. And then also with radio, I'm able to do different contesting. Parks on the Air is something that we've been doing more recently where it gets us out of the house. We set up radios at different, state parks, wildlife management areas, public fishing areas. And if you can get more than 10 contacts on radio, you've activated the park. Um, Also in some of these state parks, you've got, mountain biking trails on some of them. There's hiking trails. You can go paddle boat. So it really, encourages us to get out of the house. With remote work is great, but you do have to make an effort to, separate yourself so you can recharge and then you'll be the best you can be. Even with the exercising I do, I'm running in the neighborhood. I got a power rack in my living room, so I'll weight lift in my living room. I knit and crochet in my living room. So this is a really, great way to get out of the neighborhood and, you know, talk to people through technology. It may not be coding, but it's definitely hitting that science and technology check mark that's been a consistent in my life.
I
That is
really
so
love that.
cool. Yeah, I love it too. Sorry, Becca. I think we're both excited about it though. It's such a cool idea. I have like so many questions about the ham radio stuff. So the program, what is the program called with the parks?
It's called Parks on the Air or
Parks on
POTA.
the Air.
There's
Nice.
also SOTA, Summits on the Air, where you can, hike or mountain bike up a mountain that's a designated summit for the program. There's a
Yeah.
lot of them in North Georgia that's relatively locally. For that one, you have to make 4 contacts um, to activate the summit. So that was a little different. There's a
Yeah.
big prize on that one. I think it's 100 contacts in a year. Um, ham radio study enthusiasts, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Mountain Goat Award, and that was a really big one to get. We met someone not that long ago that did it on 2 meters, which is more of a local line of sight band. So that was definitely a challenge added to that as well.
Nice. So you built a big antenna in your yard. Is it the same? Are you using the same radio like at home and when you're traveling, or do you have like, is there a smaller one, or when
Yeah,
you're
so this particular one, this antenna is actually just a long, about 61 feet of wire for this particular one. This one was actually made in mind to take with us for portable ops.
oh wow, the one in your backyard?
There are some
Oh,
in the
sorry.
backyard for
Yeah.
the home unit that
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's a home unit. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was like. Yeah. So how heavy is the one where you are taking it to parks and, mountains and stuff?
so the one we take is probably just a couple of pounds. I mean, you've got to take,
Okay.
the batteries as well with it. Always
Right.
have to make sure to charge those beforehand so you can actually use the
Oh yeah.
said radio. And the antenna's pretty lightweight, really easy to work with. The brand that we built this antenna with, it's called Soda Beams. They actually is a company that kind of has the soda contesting in mind
Nice.
for people to just be able to easily transport it.
That's so cool. It reminds me of well, I guess Pokemon Go now. There was a game called Ingress before the people who made Pokemon Go made Ingress first, and then they basically kind of rebranded it. But the thing that I loved the most about it was that same thing, right? Where there's like there are goals and stuff, but you have to travel around. Like it not maybe as I mean you can choose how much you go, but you get rewarded for going new places and exploring new places and stuff like that. It's really neat. I love those combinations of technology and forcing you to get away from just sitting at your computer or your phone or whatever, because lots
For
of times when you
sure.
think of that kind of stuff, for me at least, I end up just sitting on my computer, doing neat stuff, but like still just sitting here. So I love that. I love anything that helps you, rewards you for getting out into the world.
For sure. Even locally, it's nice to have a good little change of scenery when you need it. And some of these state parks are within about 30 minutes from where we live. So that's not too bad of a drive.
Nice.
I think it's interesting because you've talked a lot about how we touch on technology in our lives, like, outside of the coding, but how impactful that it can still be, how it can still create connections for us, and how you're kind of utilizing your interest to be able to do that. And so you talked a little bit about this app that you're creating, that you want it to move into a subscription service, which sounds like it's filling that need as well. So did that get started as a project personally for you or to help you learn? And, how has that developed throughout your skill set development as well?
Well, kind of a little bit of everything. It was kind of my first foray into learning React. I've been in probably a consistent runner, probably for within the last 10 years. I've been running on and off since I was 14. It's something that is a great form of exercise because it's readily available and easy to do. The best forms of exercise are ones you can do. And it figured it would keep me motivated to keep running. It would, get me going in React, but also kind of think of a way of, okay, contributions can you make that aren't already out there? And that's kind of like in chemistry as well. You're doing research on something that's entirely new, or you're finding a new twist on something that's already there, or you're building on, something else, just showing something new. And, what I was hoping for to show something new with this is to be able to have something where a user can customize a training plan as opposed to something where it's like, okay, I ran 3 miles today, which that's great that those things do have their purpose. But, someone wants a little bit more than just, logging miles. This is a way to say, okay, I want to train in this manner. This run's going to be a tempo run. This run's going to be at pace, or you kind of log where you run at intervals and things like that. If you're doing speed work, for example, it kind of opens some doors to having a little more data. And, as a somebody who's spent my career handling data, telling stories, that's also kind of something that appealed to working on or more of a fitness based app.
I think that's really great. I had used, like, a handful of years ago, Couch to 5K or
Oh, yeah.
whatever it was. And it's pretty straightforward, right? Like, everybody has the same workouts, I think, every day. And then I found when I started getting back into running about a year ago that I wanted to improve, but I didn't really know how to. Because there's at least I couldn't really find anything out there. So that idea of, like, what you're talking about, that kind of, customization, different kinds of running workouts or whatever is really appealing because I know I pretty much know nothing about running. Oh, I can't run now because I tore the meniscus in my knee. But one day when I get back there, that idea of improving my speed is something that I'd like to focus on, and finding the application of data to do that is a really interesting concept, I think.
For sure. It's going well, and I'm looking forward to seeing, where it goes, where it takes me, and all of that.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of different things, right? You've got a lot of hobbies and activities, and you're doing contract work, and you're doing this. How do you balance or not balance all of the different things that you're working on?
So, I have to prioritize, basically with deadlines. Some things are a little more pressing need to be done a little faster. So those things I do, prioritize first. There's some things depending on what needs to be done with it. I take more time to dedicate to that. But what I try to do big picture, I have my written list of things I do need to do and try to prioritize the stuff that's needs to be done sooner, that needs more time. Take those first. And if there's something that can wait, that kind of gets put to the bottom of the list. So try to big picture, try to multitask, but if there's something that needs my attention a little more, you know, briefly, put some other things aside, get the priority done. And what I also do, and I did this in science as well, um, I'm a note taker. I'm hardcore pen and paper. But if I get to the end of something or I'm at a good stopping point, I will make notes of what I need to do next when I come back to it. Because sometimes you get taken away from something longer than you want to. And having that cue of what you've done and what you need to get back to is a way where I can ideally, minimize time just scrambling, trying to figure out what I did going behind myself. So that's kind of a tool that I've had for many years that I carry with me. It serves me pretty well in tech as far as, getting caught back up to speed on something that I haven't touched maybe in a bit.
I think that's such a great idea. I struggle with the problem that you have solved. You know, and for me, lots of times it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave these 14 tabs open, and hopefully they're still open when I come back to them. I can decode what I was thinking, something like that. It doesn't work that well. I mean, it sometimes works, it sometimes not. And I think when you're independent, like you are, you don't have you don't have a manager like telling you all the different things and stuff, and that sort of ability to prioritize and quickly change contexts. I think it's such a valuable skill, and I feel like you've figured a lot of that stuff out. It's really cool to hear. I'm also very jealous all the time of people who can take notes and do take good notes and useful notes. I never learned that skill. I struggled with it in school and just didn't even try after school. But the times that I've taken notes, I'm like, man, this is awesome. I should do this all the time, and then I don't. But
It's nice with the to-do list. I have kind of that visual cue of kind of where to start, where I need to look and go. And I also use org mode with Emacs to kind of keep another list of some things like what progress I'm making, where I'm at on it. It gives you, to do and progress and review done. So I use that as well to accompany. But yeah, even if I'm in a meeting with somebody, I think one of my first meetings with you, Dan, on the work we did, I'm a note taker. If I'm looking down doing this, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just taking notes because I'm, got to have my pen and paper nearby. I don't know if that comes with just, keeping laboratory notebooks all those years. I mean, even my knitting and crocheting, I've got a lab notebook quote of the work I do with it. So, um,
that's awesome.
I love that, and I met, with an owner of a company a couple of years ago, and I really appreciated when he said to me, "If I'm looking down, it's because I'm taking notes," right? Because I think sometimes that can be off-putting, and I appreciate that you mentioned that too, like, if I'm not looking and I try and do that as well because I'm a big note taker, and I don't know where I'm going with this train of thought other than, um note taking is one of those things that we actually talk about a lot at Virtual Coffee and getting
we
started in
do.
note taking and different tools for note taking. And it can be a little bit sounds straightforward, right? You take notes, but it's not like it's complex for a lot of people. And then the tools out there can be really overwhelming. I find myself mostly pen and paper, but I use Obsidian very lightly just because I mostly use it for Markdown to be able to do that. Have you gone on like a note-taking journey where you've tried some of these other tools? I tried Notion like a handful of times, and every time I'm just super overwhelmed. I can't handle it.
So I've kept up with org mode a little bit. There's a lot org mode can do. It's definitely more of an Emacs based tool. That one, I just kind of keep trying some general notes and also kind of a backup in case, something happens to my spiral notebook or I can't find the information readily. So I have it electronically so I can kind of grasp where I'm at with it and find it. I've worked with Notion a little bit. I don't dislike it, but I didn't see where it really helped me specifically. So I don't use it very often. It's not a knock on the tool. It's just something that's not really working for me right now. But what helps me with taking notes, and sometimes I'll go back, sometimes I don't necessarily need the detail, but it gives me, if when I need it, space and time. Because if I have space and time, I can usually find what I'm looking for. I tell people one of my superpowers is finding needles in haystacks, and that helps me do that, especially if you can give me a timeline on that. Um, Also, as well, just writing the notes sometimes helps me better retain the information. So it helps me slow down, absorb what I need to absorb, and kind of have that reference as well. And kind of circling back to ham radio, I actually might see on some of my Twitter. I have this clipboard where I'm writing down my contacts. I've had that clipboard since I was 10 years old. I got it for my birthday, and
Oh,
it has seen QSOs for ham radio. It's seen my weekly spelling list. It's seen my PhD dissertation notes. It's seen a lot, but it's it's something that it's just nice to write it down, and I've learned when I'm taking quick notes, like with my radio contacts, I have to get those logged in 'cause you have to log them into their app for it to count. I've got to do that pretty soon because you can get a backlog, or it's like, I don't remember the details of this particular QSO, so I need to just go log it, get it where it needs to go. So I get the important details where they need to be. Of course, if I'm writing fast, the longer time goes, the less I'm able to read my own handwriting. I'm left-handed. I got that scrawl going on. Um, but yeah, it's like, I am a shameless note taker, and, just any like, we've talked, yeah, virtual coffee. It's like, okay, I just need some college ruled paper. I need an extra fine point on it because being a lefty, you get all this ink down your hands, makes
yeah.
such a mess. When I would TA in grad school, when I was on the whiteboard, even whiteboard present day, I'm always checking myself to make sure I don't
Yeah.
have all the residue on my hand, but I had lefty problems.
I always wanted to be left-handed. There's a fun fact about me.
Blessing and a curse.
What? Yeah. I mean, you can train yourself to be left-handed. Just do
Well,
it.
I tried to for a while when I was a kid. Just don't know that I have that kind of time or
Yeah.
desire
Yeah.
anymore.
Uh,
And then I feel like it's kind of cheating, like, "Oh, I'm not really left-handed. I just forced myself to be able to be
yeah,
wanted to
I
be
think,
born
I
that
mean,
way."
honestly, being ambidextrous would be the coolest. I think that'd be really cool. Be able to, do everything equally with both hands.
Fun
That's the
fact,
dream.
actually, left-handed people have a greater tendency to be ambidextrous,
Oh, interesting.
which
Is that
makes sense.
a social thing or is that like a,
Well,
you know
in a right-handed world, it's like we have to adapt. So I learned to play
Mm.
guitar back in college. And, I was brought up to the teacher. I'm like, I'm left-handed. Do I need a left-handed guitar? And he presented that, lefties can be more ambidextrous. And they're like, that makes sense. He's like, try to learn right-handed because you're really going to cut yourself off if have to be, if you have to guitar left-handed. But guitar left hand's what controls the neck. So it actually worked out for me. I don't play a lot. I haven't played. I can't remember the last time I played, but taking kind of that into consideration, I was able to do that right-handed. I sometimes have to cut right-handed because the scissors don't like me, but
yeah.
but once I get a
I
pair of scissors that works, like they're mine.
yeah. Yeah,
Bring them back.
that, the scissors was a big so my younger son is left-handed, and that was, like and none of my family is, and the scissors, the fact that there's actually right-handed and left-handed scissors, and they're built differently, like, that was a mind-blowing thing. I had no idea about that. Like, I thought it was just like, oh, the shape of the holes, the shape that, it's just like a comfort thing. It was actually like the way that the cutting edges are cut is
Oh,
opposite
right.
on left-handed scissors. And it's something about the way that, because the way you hold it, your thumb is moving the scissors, so that blade is the one that's moving. And so when you do it the opposite side, it doesn't cut that well if you have right-handed scissors and you're using your left hand. And I had no idea about that. It's like a mind blowing thing. So
Those little scissors in school, those little basic
Yeah,
safety
yeah,
scissors,
yeah.
those are a nightmare for
Yeah.
left-handed
Oh,
people.
I mean,
You
that's why
can't do it
we
right-handed.
yeah. That's exactly why we did that, because we have those safety scissors, and so you can buy left-handed safety scissors, and they
Yeah.
work, you know you know what I mean? And so we did that, and it made a difference, but I had no idea. Yeah. Learning new things. I feel like Sam said he's 4, and he gets confused sometimes because Bennett's right-handed, his older brother that follows around and does all this stuff, and so he goes back and forth. Like, his mind is left-handed, you know what I mean? But he's like,
Mm.
he just gets all mixed up. I'm like, wait, why are you using your right hand? I'm like, you can do whatever you want, but like, I think it might be easier for you if you use your left. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot. So I don't know.
It's
I
always
was
I kept
Um,
to remind myself, like, am I left-handed when I do this or am I right-handed when I do this? Because
yeah.
when I played softball many years ago, I played right-handed because I was
Mm.
I throw better with my left, and I throw left dominantly to this day, but I couldn't catch because you have to your gloves on your right hand playing
Yeah.
Mhm.
softball, and I couldn't catch as well with my right hand, so I had to switch that up because it's like,
Oh
"Okay, I'm gonna
wow.
be more efficient if I can catch left-handed and, get by with my, right-handed arm." So, yeah, it's definitely, you go through life figuring it out,
Yeah.
and any, lefty-ol can empathize with, backing out of a parking space the wrong way, and there,
Oh.
get the wrong end of the door, like, with the bar, you push on the wrong side.
Ye
Yeah.
I
Oh.
do that all the time. I'm not sure what's wrong with me. What's my brain still wanting to be left-handed?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
interesting.
awesome.
I was talking to somebody recently about this. It might have been James Quick, and I wonder, like, there are some people that they will write left-handed or write right-handed, but they'll do things like play golf or play sports left-handed. And so then I wonder, like, how do you like what makes you right-handed or left-handed? Is it just the hand that you write with and that's what you choose? Because if you use your left hand dominantly in other things, then what are you just ambidextrous? Is that what you say? I don't
S
know.
so for me, I would tell people I am pretty decently left-handed because some people are a little more dominant on the left hand than others. So, I have a cousin who's left-handed. She played basketball right-handed. I played basketball left because I was much better left-handed than right. Although you had to, if you're a short 5'3" person like myself playing, you got to play point guard, handle the ball. But I was
Yeah.
more dominant on the left hand side. With softball, again, I was just able to be more functional playing right-handed, so I could throw and catch.
Yeah.
Whereas, having to catch with my right hand, it'd been more of a learning curve at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you could teach yourself to do anything with either hand if both hands work the same. But left-handed is this or right-handed, whatever. It's genetic, like it is a genetic thing, but there's like a lot of social, things. Like there was, there used to be like superstitions about left-handed people, right? And so that got like corrected. And so the writing is like probably they just were either taught to write right-handed before anybody realized that they're left-handed, or because it's kind of hard when you have like little kids. It's like you're not really paying attention to whatever what they're doing or whatever. And so if they start writing and you say use your right hand, before you realize that they're left-handed, then that's probably how that happens. You're making a lot of faces, Becca. What are you
I'm
looking
going
at?
down a rabbit hole of like what makes some like what happens in your brain if you're left-handed. And
Mm.
I mean it's wild. Let's see.
We're
It
in our right
says
mind. This for right
handedness
brain.
is associated with functional lateralization of cerebral dominance. I just have never and
Totally. I mean, I was
left-handers
gonna say that. I
have
just
less lateralized brains. What
what?
this is really I don't know. I never really thought of like the neurology of left-handedness until right now, and now this is going to be something I'm stuck on. Wow, there's studies that are done on identical twins with different handedness.
Yes, that is actually I had, identical twin friends in high school. They're a lot of times they're mirror images of each other, so their parts
Yes.
Whoa.
are
Mhm.
mirror images. One's usually right-handed, one's usually left-handed or maybe a little more on the ambidextrous side. but that's actually very common with
Yeah.
identical twins, at least,
Yep.
or
Uh,
one's right-handed, one's left.
yeah, I have good friends that are in the same situation. I had forgotten about that till just now, but yeah, it's that
My
honestly
mind
has to
is
be
blown.
frustrating. You as a parent, you have twins, and then you have to buy different sets of everything all at once. Um, different
All
baseball
right, well,
mitts.
I'm gonna provide some links in the show notes for anybody else who is interested in the brains of left-handers.
This was an interesting. We always have these strange offshoots in the
All
podcast.
about
So
like the ink mess on
this is
my
a good one.
hand. This is something that I've always been cognizant of because it makes such a mess. And we like talk about note taking. And I'm like, I'm a believer in note taking. This is how I do it.
I love it though. I mean, like, this is a lot of the discussion about like who people are, right? And I don't know. I don't have these conversations all the time. I've never had this conversation about left-handedness. So it's like fun to kind of think about like, okay, who are the people who are in tech? And like this is maybe more fun for me than comparing technologies. I want to circle back just for a second, because you have a PhD.
I do.
We didn't really talk about that much. So your PhD is in chemistry, right?
Yes, I'm specifically organic chemistry.
The hard stuff.
I went down the chemistry path um, in college. I was a biology major at first. I changed my major to chemistry, and when people ask, it's like, okay, why are you a chemistry major? Why did you change? I took organic chemistry and I accidentally liked it. So, you get these horror stories about organic chemistry is so hard, it's soul sucking, it's torture. And, I really started enjoying it in spite of kind of a funny story about a lab write up I did many years ago. Um, I remember going to office hours and getting frustrated. I finally got the answer. And then I remember telling my then professor, I'm never going to work in a lab. Famous last word. Because I spent years in research in labs, and funny enough, that professor was actually my contact on my first academic research job. So I'm sure he laughed a lot about my then 19-year-old self proclaiming that's never going to happen. Well,
That's funny. My freshman year of college, I wanted to be a math major, and so I wanted to take Calc 2, but they didn't offer it. Instead, they offered an English class, which I took, and then I ended up being an English major and taught English for 10 years after that. So it's funny, like the way that things happen that you don't expect. Yeah, and now I'm in tech. So
sure. And even when I was a lab tech, when I was applying to graduate schools, because you can learn a lot as a lab tech, but you also hit glass ceilings. So I wanted to
Mhm.
do more work where I could do independent work. I could own my own projects, you know, write papers, have a lot more options than you could as a lab tech. And so, in spite of getting into the life sciences program at the medical college I was doing research on, I'm like, organic chemistry was where it was at for me. I need to go down that path. So I went to Georgia Tech. And my first half of my PhD was building catalysts to purify compounds that could be active pharmaceutical ingredients, another type of API. And then I did my second half of my PhD in total synthesis, where the compounds I was targeting had activity against malaria.
Wow.
So it was really some neat research there. And then once I finished at Georgia Tech, I went to UT Knoxville, University of Tennessee, where I was able to, in my postdocs, take my organic synthesis skill set, build catalysts to convert lignin into valuable fuels and chemicals, where that was the end goal with the catalyst. Get these valuable fuels and chemicals to have an alternative for non-renewable resources, should they become
Mhm.
depleted. So that's some of the work with my, PhD research as well as my postdoc.
That's fascinating. And so you spent a lot of time, it sounds like, doing all of this stuff and definitely a lot of schooling, and that's a huge investment. And then you decided to move into tech. Was there any part of you when you were making that decision that was sad leaving that behind? Or, I can't imagine it was an easy decision to move over, but maybe that's a part of the story we don't know yet.
Well, some of it too, it was we're in the height of the pandemic, and you know, even though at my time my work was on site because in chemistry you can't really, unless you're safely set up to have the fume hood and do this stuff at home, you don't do that stuff at home. And I was at the point of like, okay, well, what is normal going to look like when the world opens up again? And I wanted to have those options of being able to use that same problem solving skill set to be able to do a role where I could do anywhere. Um, so some of it was the sign of the times. It was a lot of it, and again, having that flexibility of doing your work from anywhere, provided you do it well. That time you don't commute could be time you find a mountain bike trail, and you get a ride in because those things were important too. So I do look back and can be proud of the work I've done, the contributions I've made to the field. Um, but I've had a good time in tech, a great time troubleshooting. Like I'll go through some of my apps and kind of take the same approach as I did in science. It's like, okay, I got to troubleshoot. I got to take one variable at a time. In tech, of course, I'll play user on my UI and going back to taking notes. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do engage in an action. I'm gonna write down what happens, and then have that record of where maybe something went south. It's like, okay, I'm gonna target this here, start here because I know this isn't doing what I want it to do, and then push it forward. And yeah, it's not being in a lab, but you know being able to troubleshoot still and be able to do it on that rapid time scale is something that I really enjoy, and I'm glad I took that step. And it is a risk in a way because it is different than setting up your experiments. But to be able to still troubleshoot and solve problems, and still even collaborate. So it's like in research, with collaborations, plant scientists, for example, instead of me learning how to be a plant scientist, I go talk to a plant scientist. We talk about some problems that we may need to solve for the project, and they've got the infrastructure to set up those experiments. Whereas I would have a lab accessible where we had, stuff setting up to do synthetic organic chemistry. It's less time for me to set up what I need to set up. I have the know-how and the instruments and the um, other setup to get those things done. And even in software, in virtual coffee, even specifically, I have an idea of like, okay, I don't do Ruby on Rails. I know Meg does. I know people who do Vue, TypeScript, Dan being one of those people. Content creation, Becca, you do this every day. You know who you can reach out to that can give you insight on things that you need to know, but you don't need to spend day to day doing. So I'm still
100%.
getting all those goodies that I got, working in a research lab.
I think that's such a great mindset, and I think there are a lot of people out there that think that you have to do it all, and you definitely don't. It's knowing who you can talk to about doing those things and utilizing them when you need to, that really makes you strong at what you do. That's really great.
Yeah, especially as excuse me, especially as an independent developer, it's such a strong and important skill to have, and your clients, I think, would appreciate it too. And not have like the exact same thing, right? Like, oh no, I have to do this thing that I know nothing about. Do I want the do I want the client to pay me for like 2 weeks to learn a new thing, or an hour of somebody else's time that already knows it, right? The same thing. It's so cool.
So I do have just two more questions for you. And the first one is, you've got this really great journey that you've gone on. You've learned all of these things. What is one word to describe your career journey?
Let's say dynamic, hands down. It constantly changed whether I was seeking those changes or they, presented themselves. And it's like I was keeping an open mind, like, okay, this is the better fit for me right now. And I'll use it again. I accidentally liked organic chemistry. I went down that path in science. And then when I switched over to tech, I thought that data science was going to be my jam. And, I don't close the doors on anything, but, having that skill set in science to be able to visually, tell stories with data, and, I'm like, That's me. That's written about me." But, I ended up getting really acquainted with the front end and, being a visual learner, that actually looking back makes a lot of sense. And I've been, more front end heavy, more React heavy that way. And then I've also learned a little bit more on the back end, circling back after a little bit from the initial Python and R with data science. So yeah, it's I'd say dynamic. It's constantly changing. It's going to change from this point forward, and you know, keeping an open mind has always you know been beneficial because you just never know what you might be a good fit for at a given time and space.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. What a strength that you have in that openness to consider other things that might not seem like the natural path, because that can be really hard to do. And my last question for you is, what is one word that describes you?
I'm going to go with the word consistent. So I would say I am a what you see is what you get kind of person, personality wise. I would have told you that years ago. And then in spite of our learning experiences, the things that we grow from, I would say the Rebecca you're talking to now was the same Rebecca you would have met in high school, more or less. Um, and then as far as staying consistent on goals or projects that matter to me, from anywhere of videotaping myself for 3 months doing cheers and jumps and handsprings so I could finally make my squad success. I did that 3 months straight to see myself to train and see what I needed to do, to, present day where I've been consistently working on coding. And, even though you may not see this big significant change in a day,
Mhm.
um, being consistent has consistently served me well. So, I definitely say I'm consistent. If I can keep at something, sometimes it happens, rapidly. Sometimes you wish it would happen faster, but that consistency has always been something that it, again, has served me well.
This is great. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and talking through all of this, your interesting journey, and giving us, I think, a lot of insight into what you're doing. And your approach to me is something that I'm going to go back and reflect on, because I think that there are so many strengths that you have there in ways that I would like to grow in my own journey. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Absolutely. And thank you both again for having me. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca.
You know.
All right, we will talk to you soon.
All right. I'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. This episode was produced by Dan Ott and Bekah Weigel. If you have questions or comments, you can hit us up on Twitter at virtualcoffee.io or email us at podcast@virtualcoffee.io. You can find the show notes, sign up for the newsletter, check out any of our other resources on our website, virtualcoffee.io. If you're interested in sponsoring Virtual Coffee, you can find out more information on our website at virtualcoffee.io/sponsorship. Please subscribe to our podcast and be sure to leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.